Sometimes failure is the best path to success. That's one of the key takeaways from this weekend's Web Summit that I attended in Dublin, Ireland. Internet entrepreneurs and venture capitalists met in the Irish capital as part of that country's effort to foster innovation. I spoke to Twitter creator and chairman Jack Dorsey about his decision to leave his first venture behind and go into business with Evan Williams and Biz Stone.
It was very hard, and it was my first time as a CEO, and I was learning, on the job, and I was faced with an interesting situation because we actually engineered the system not to be a real-time messaging system like my work at Dispatch, but actually it was built off more of a publishing system. So we weren't really expecting to be so successful that soon. So we went down a lot, and this is where you see the whale today, and that's all our fault. One thing we realized is that we weren't communicating very well internally. And we weren't communicating very well externally. We had all these users who were very passionate about Twitter and using it, but we weren't telling them anything that was going on. So one day we realized this, and we're like, oh my God, we're so stupid. Like, what are we doing? We're not telling anyone. We're building a company, a communications company, a focus around transparency, and we're not being transparent. So we started talking about, like we said, like bluntly, we have some issues. We don't know how to fix them yet. What we're doing to understand how to fix them is we're putting instrumentation in place so that we can tell what's happening within the system and fix it and make decisions around it. And that was a turning point for the company. And the users loved it. They were fully engaged, and they really went with it. At the same time, the economy was failing completely. And there's no better time than a depression or recession to create something new and to innovate. So it was a huge opportunity to start something new. And I've always been fascinated by the financial world and healthcare. Healthcare has another 2 years in the United States before we can start innovating, but there were tons of people being fired in the financial world, and it just cleared the slate for innovations.
How do you get to the point where you say, we've achieved what we want on a personal level and feel okay stepping back perhaps on the management and the financial side? Or does that ever happen?
I will never step back. I mean, it's always evolving. I think Twitter is interesting because I think it is a future of communication. I think it's an evolution of communication. I think it's a different way of communicating, and I think it's a true utility that one can come to and build their own products, enabling the same thing that we have in Europe and in America and many places in the world, but to everywhere, and to amplify the weakest signal in the world. And so that's success to me.
And you said one of the things you learned early on with the Dispatch example was the importance of maintaining some degree of ownership there, right, and influence. So how did that change with Twitter and then with this new venture?
I think it's really important for the founders and the founding team to lead the company at least initially, and always have like big roles within the company going forward. Because you have an arc with any company, and it's been, if you have an idea, it's been in your brain for quite some time. You've answered a bunch of questions to yourself and to others, and there's only a few people who have gone through that entire arc. And it's really important that DNA always stays within the company because it binds it and it grounds it.
Obviously now Twitter has publicly said that they're looking and trying out all these different advertising models and promoted tweets and the like, but when does that recognition period happen?
We always had models in mind when we started Twitter. We always knew kind of the ways we wanted to approach monetizing it. But that's the biggest thing about any startup, especially a startup that's building a platform or a utility, is you could go a million different directions, and you have to choose just one of them, maybe two of them. So my view is that companies and CEOs are really nothing more than editors, and it's really an editorial function. You have all these inputs, and you have to edit into a cohesive story. You have to edit not only the product into a cohesive story, but you have to sustain the story, and you do that through revenue. So there's a point where you have some mass, and I would say that 165 million, we're not even close to where we should be. I mean, we've just scratched the surface of what Twitter can do, I think. But at the same time, we need to sustain the growth forward, and we need to race to $1 billion, and $1 billion is not going to be cheap.
Then when people inevitably ask you what's next on the financial side, do you find that a distraction? Do you get frustrated with the question of when are you guys going to go public and what's your revenue model?
I think it goes hand in hand, and I think if you really dig into those questions, the reason people are asking them is because they really care for this company to succeed. They want it to sustain, and that is a measure of success that allows a company like this to sustain. So if we don't reach that milestone, then it could disappear and it could go nowhere. And I think a lot of our users don't want that to happen. So they go. To me, like the monetization emerges from the usage. It emerges from the network. It extends the network. It makes the network more powerful.